All right, hello, my beauties and bees, and welcome to yet another installment of Cryptic Corner, where we explore the unexplained, the supernatural, the paranormal and hidden, the mysterious, the cursed, the alien and forbidden. I am your host, Miss Bumblebee, and today we are looking once again into uh, the horrors that wait in our own backyard. Allegedly, and according to this folklore and creepypasta anyway, because today we are looking at a phenomena that is called the not deer. What is a not deer? Well, a not deer is a sort of cryptid that looks like a deer, but guess what? It's not. We're going to be watching a video by a channel called Darkness Prevails. They're kind of a storyteller channel, so that's what we're watching today. They have a lot of crazy stuff going on that they talk about, and we may revisit if I enjoy this video enough. They have everything from True McDonald stories to Bigfoot and everything in between. So it's varying quality, but the phenomena of not deer is a little bit. I think there's some truth to it, and we'll talk about it as we dive into the video. But without further ado, let's give them the floor.
They look like deer, but be warned, they're the furthest thing from the peaceful herbivores you're used to.
I'm gonna restart that. I don't know.
They look like deer, but be warned, they're the furthest thing from the peaceful herbivores you're used to. They're called simply not deer. These creatures might look like deformed or mutated deer. They might seem to be deer, but behave aggressively, intelligently, or even malevolently. Some might even appear to be something else wearing the skin of a deer to disguise itself.
Yes, that is right, Jason Jacoby. Not deer. Notder. It's like, yeah, Notder. Simple name. Tells you exactly what it is, or actually doesn't tell you exactly what it is. The only thing it tells you is what it's not. What it's supposed to look like it. I think the name comes from people will see them. Say, did you see those deers? And someone will say, those were not deer. So that's the idea I have, that's what a not deer is, but we'll see.
What it truly is, we may never know, but what we do know is they're terrifying. Enjoy these allegedly true, scary stories about sightings of not deer. By the way,
y'all are missing the context, okay? I see you guys. I see Ember and I see Jason trying to crack this open. Listen. You have to think they're a deer, but they're not deer. That's what makes it a not deer. You have to think it's a deer, but it's not a deer. It's something else. You don't know what it is, but it's not a deer. That is a not deer. I love Dick so much. I have Dick Combat on my channel, but I didn't play it this morning. It was a new one. I got a couple of Dick bucks going at it for a female's attention. It's super cute. They're adorable. They're just like tough little bunny guys. With their little taper snoots.
One of these stories is definitely from an older episode, and a few others seemed really familiar, so I apologize if I accidentally re-narrated some older stuff. Remember to send me your scary stories at darkstories.org, and be sure to follow Freaky Folklore on Spotify to help us make it to 100,000 Spotify followers before New Year's. The comment of the day comes from a previous episode titled Wrong Turn Horror Stories. This was posted by Fear Street, who says, I took a wrong turn into my mom's bedroom one night as a kid. Scariest horror story of my life. My reply? I picked this comment because it brought back a childhood memory of mine of when I walked in on my parents taking a pit stop into Squishy Town. The only way...
Okay, we've all been there. I mean, maybe we haven't all been there, so we've all had something similar. Ember, do you see a llama and do you think it's a deer? I mean, if you do, I guess that could be a not deer. I've never had that happen. I've never been like, I think probably if there was like an actual animal that was that I thought was a deer, but it wasn't. It would probably be some other, already a dactyl, right? It would be, I mean, I think a camelid's probably a little bit too big for me to mistake for a deer, but I got an antelope, definitely. Another, like, a bovid of some kind. There's like the vampire deer. Have y'all ever seen the vampire deer? Because they are not actually even deers. They're deer. They're bovid. Well, okay. So let me clarify when I say deers. When I say deers, I mean the multiple species of deers. Each within that species, they're deer. It's the same thing with fish. You say fish for all the fish that are in the same species, and then fishes for multiple species of fish. You can do that same thing with deer. Yeah, the musk deer, I've talked about it on the channel before, but they aren't even deer. Sometimes they're called the water deer, musk deer, but they have super cool little thingy bits. Check that out. But they're not actually, I know these are the ones that are cervids. Which ones are not actually cervids? It's they're closely related to like caprids. Hold on, I was actually wrong. Definitely wrong about this. It's which deer is it that's not actually a deer? Yeah, pronghorn aren't actually antelopes either, but that's a completely different set of scenarios. They filled it. It's not the musk deer. Which deer is actually a bovid? All right, I'll get back to you guys on that. I know that there's one that's called a deer, but it's not. This asshole. Yeah, I'm getting away from him. Here we go.
The way I could react back then was walking away and laughing all the way back to my room. I'm still coping with it to this very day. Leave a comment in today's episode and I might reply to it in one of the next ones if I find it interesting. Now, let's begin. There's something out there that only looks like deer. From Creeped Out. I used to live in a small southern town. The town parts were pretty run down and badly maintained, but the forests and running trails and parks were stunning. I moved out at the age of 18 once I'd graduated, and I had enough money in savings to get an apartment. Luckily for me, there was room at an apartment complex that was only 10 minutes of a walk from my favorite park. This park was my favorite because it had a long, winding running trail looping around it. After moving out and settling into my new apartment, I made it a habit of waking up at 6 a.m., 2 hours before I needed to be at work, and spending at least an hour at that running trail. Morning runs got me ready for the day and made my coffee afterward taste much better. One Tuesday morning, I went running as I would have any other workday. It was a bit colder than usual, but...
No, I was right. It is the musk deer. I don't know what that other thing was talking about. Sorry, it was annoying me, so I was like, no, I know I'm right about this. I know that these are actually bovids. Bovidae. Right here. Musk deer. Siberian musk deer are not... I don't know why that other article said that they were cervids, because they are not cervids. They are bovids. What is wrong with... well, I don't know what was wrong with that other article. That is bizarre that it said that, because they are definitely in bovidae. Damn it, they're not cervids, they're bovids. Roar! I am mad. Yeah, I don't think I'm muted. I see my things bouncing. I don't have anything playing right now. I'm just getting mad about the deer. You might have heard a moment of silence while I was reading this, because I was like, I paused the video and I was reading it and I was like, you better be telling me that these are bovids, because everybody keeps saying they're deer and they're not. They're bovids. They're like little cows. Look at that. That's cute, right? But it's not a deer. It's a not deer. This is a real life not deer. Never deer. Yeah. Siberian musk deer. And they're adorable. Look at how adorable they are. Isn't that crazy? They're crazy cute. I don't think I've ever seen an animal with big long tusky fangs that's that cute. Have you? Look at it standing in the freaking snow. Oh my gosh, I want to pet it. I want to boop it and pet it. I love it. I'm in love with this deer. All right. So, there's a whole group of them though. Anyway, but these are the not deer. But that's not what they're talking about. This jogger's talking about. Let's get back to him.
But nothing I couldn't handle. Half of this trail takes me through a wooded area with a few disc golf posts that no one ever used. For a few minutes, you'd find yourself surrounded by trees with no visibility of the road. Next to
Any disc golfers players out there? I want to play disc golf. Someone needs to teach me how, though. I don't know how, but it looks fun. I'd love to go play disc golf with some friends sometime. Sheep squatch are not deer. Well, are they sheep? Are they not sheep? I bet not sheep and not deer. Yeah.
Park, nor the rest of the park itself. Anyway, a few minutes into my walk that day, I made it to this section of the trail. I rounded one of the bends and stopped. Straight ahead of me was a buck. The sight of it startled me, but looking at how odd the thing appeared to be took my breath away.
Alright, okay, I'm cool with not deer, and not cows, and not llamas, not sheep. But I'm not going to... where I'm drawing the line is not zebus. Because we're not going to have not zebus. That's not a thing that we can say.
Its legs appeared broken or malformed in some way, as if they had too many joints and were too long or too short. The buck's entire body trembled as it breathed in, and the face was all messed up. Deer aren't supposed to have forward-facing eyes like a predator. But I kid you not, this deer's eyes set right at the front where its forehead was. Its mouth hung open as it breathed, raspily. Its teeth were a hue between brown and yellow.
And I know they're telling this story to be scary and to, like, oh, it's a cryptid of some kind, but let's be frank, this person saw a deer with what's called chronic wasting disease, right? They're skinny and bony, and they walk funny, and they shiver, and they may have sores and patches on them because they are always hurting themselves because their legs are going to be crumpled and they're going to walk weird, and it's really absolutely terrifying and sad. And their faces are so sunken that their eyes look like they're pulled forward. It's really sad, but it's not a cryptid. So I'm going to say this first sighting is going to be debunked, but let's let it go on with the description and see if it sounds like chronic wasting disease to you guys. And I'll read the symptoms of chronic wasting disease in a second.
And they were sharper than I thought a deer's teeth would be. I turned right around and began to jog away, pretending I hadn't seen it. But it knew. I soon heard the clumsy clomping of hooves on concrete behind me. I nearly screamed. I glanced back and saw it half walking, half running towards me. The way its four legs scuttered in no way resembled a deer. It lacked all grace and normalcy. It looked as if its legs would snap in half at any moment. Seeing this, I ran full speed out of the trail.
Okay, so chronic wasting disease symptoms are including but not limited to behavioral changes and occurrence in the majority of cases, weight loss over time, decreased interaction with other animals, listlessness, lowering of the head, tremors, repetitive walking in set patterns, and nervousness, excess salivation, and grinding of the teeth are also observed. Most deer show increased drinking and urination. Increased drinking and salivation may contribute to the spread of the disease. Loss of fear of humans and appearance of confusion are also common. Behavioral changes, emaciation, weakness, ataxia, salivation, aspirational pneumonia, progressive death.
When I made it to the road and away from the woods, I looked back. There was no deer in sight. I ran on back home hoping that I'd just imagined it, but obviously that was just me trying to deal with the intense dread I felt. I have no idea what it was. It certainly wasn't a normal deer. Maybe it was a buck with some sort of birth defect that had managed to survive this long. Maybe it was an extremely diseased animal. Still, both of these excuses don't seem to explain it. These days, I stay on the half of the trail that doesn't.
Yeah, it is a prion disease. Yeah, like mad cow disease, kind of, except for it affects in, I guess, globally. We'll see. We have mule deer, white-tailed deer, red deer, sika deer, elk, caribou, and moose. So everything then. Everything in. I want to make sure I say this right. Basically, everything in Cervidae can be impacted by this. It looks like, at least the Caprolinae. But I mean, just because it hasn't spread to these other groups doesn't mean it can't.
Cut through the woods.
And yeah, it's sort of the folklore around the knot deer is sort of like a skinwalker thing, but I don't think the knot deer are skinwalkers. I think that they're deer with wasting disease or other afflictions. There's a lot of different characteristics that can be brought forth or brought out in a species when they're dealing with certain afflictions, especially afflictions that make them want to grind on stuff and cause sores and stuff. You'll see a lot of these pictures of the wasting disease deer with like big bloody patches or big raw patches on them and stuff, and that's because they're like grinding their teeth. It's really sensory, and also they're clumsy and falling all over the place in the forest. So they're getting cuts and scrapes. And you've walked through the forest, you kind of know. Could you imagine what it would be like to be falling all over the place walking through the forest? And that's their life until they die. Just getting progressively worse. It's a terrible way to go.
That's not a deer. From Kelly Fox. This happened in winter of 2019. It was late, probably around 1 a.m. My best friend at the time, Stevie, realized she was out of smokes, and we don't smoke the same kind, so she convinced me to go out. It was freezing that night. The kind of night where there's no wind, but the chill in the air is so cold, you can feel it in your bones. As my late Nana would say, it's raw outside, which I always thought described that kind of cold well. We hurried to my van and got—
I'd like to say it freaking cuts into my bones. That's where I feel it the worst, right? Is when it's super cold, it cuts right into my bones, and that's where all the aching starts, and it works its way out. The video is very loud. Okay, I can pull that down.
Got in quickly. It didn't take long. The store is only down the road, so we were only gone for like 10 minutes anyway.
We about the same now?
When we drove into my uncovered driveway, the headlights of my van lit up the piece of my backyard you can see through the mesh fence, and into the right side of the yard, which goes back a ways, hits another mesh fence, and then goes into a small clearing and a tree line that leads into some woods. Basically,
Cocaine Bear was a hit. Why not Murder Deer? There's a zombie sheep movie from Scotland that is freaking gold and has been overlooked. For people who like movies like Velocipaster and things like that, and Lamageddon, those kind of cheesy movies, watch, what's the zombie sheep movie from New Zealand? Hold on. Black Sheep? Is that the one from New Zealand? Yeah, Black Sheep. Yes. It's so silly and cheesy. Watch that movie if you like this. If you like this guy, there's also Zombievers. Zombievers is cheesy popcorn fun, like shoestring budget, but someone put a lot of love in the practical effects and stuff on it, so it's really cheesy and good if you like that sort of thing. But yeah, Cocaine Bear was a hit. I've seen people put crack coons, right? Crack coons would be funny. Raccoons on crack, things like that are milking that Sharknado kind of humor and action, right?
The entire right side of the yard was lit up from the headlights. We didn't get out of the car right away. That was just our routine, to smoke a cigarette while the van is still warm before going in. But it didn't take long for Stevie to point out that we were not alone. After I lit my cigarette, I handed her the lighter and she asked, "What's that deer doing in your yard? Why is it just standing there? Is there something wrong with it?" I suddenly didn't feel the warmth of the van anymore, and my heart skipped a beat. I looked over into the yard, and standing in my headlights was the outline of what looked to be a deer at first. I didn't take my eyes off of it, but I grabbed Stevie's arm and said, "That's not a deer. Get in the back and stay down." I must have sounded serious, but she did what I said without hesitation. I
would not have succumbed to the idea that that just because this person was afraid of this diseased deer that I needed to go hide in the back seat. That would not be my response. I mean, a lot of people maybe would, but I'm like super into it. I'd be like, oh my gosh, no, slowly move forward. We're going to see. And then I'd probably call the local Fish and Wildlife, because they need to know if there is this contagious, highly contagious disease in the deer population in their jurisdiction. They need to know that, so you should report it, and not to. I mean, you can report it to darkstories.org too, but you should probably report it to the animal control folks as well.
The figure, which for the most part looked just like a deer. But the longer I looked, the more I knew something was wrong. The flesh looked necrotic and was falling off, skin sliding off as it stood there, like it was rotting right before my eyes. The antlers were small, but they were covered in what looked to be blood, and as I finally got to look at its face, it had a set of blue eyes that looked human. It had a mouth with lips, and I swear it was smiling. It was smiling like it saw an old friend. I was frozen with fear for a moment, like time slowed down once I realized.
So, just a deer can have blue eyes, right? The caribou's eyes actually change from gold to blue seasonally. It's really cool trick they do to help them see when the world's snowy, right? And nifty. But like a piebald deer may have blue eyes. Albino deer may have blue or pink eyes. Or I guess it wouldn't be a true albino. It would be Lewistic if it had blue eyes. But yeah, there's different conditions that a deer can be born with to give it blue eyes. It sounds like, by the talking about blood and stuff being on the antlers though, and it being all torn up, it sounds like it might just have been a buck that was just in a fight. That's what it sounds like to me. What do you guys think? Did this guy see a buck that just been in a fight? I don't know about the blue eyes and stuff. I mean, it's peculiar. It is peculiar, but it's not. I mean, it doesn't mean it was a horror movie monster, a deer with blue eyes. There are so many generic variations within cervids. That's why they do so well over such wide ranges.
It seemed to know me. I was only able to start moving because the thing began to mouth words. I noped the heck out of there and climbed into the back seat with Stevie. When I got back there, she started to open her mouth, but I gave her the shh signal, so she stopped. After about 10 minutes of complete silence, I decided to take a look, which I wish I hadn't, or I wish I'd waited longer, because when I looked, it was trying to climb over the fence. It now had human legs, arms with hooves, and a half-deer face. The deer skin had seemed to have fallen off completely by now, and it revealed new human-looking skin. Before I was able to duck down, it must have sensed me, because it looked back and we locked eyes one last time. It was still smiling, so I went back to hiding. We probably waited.
So maybe this is more like a skinwalker, D, like you were saying. This one at least sounds more like towards the end here, as the story goes on with it trying to climb over the fence and all human and stuff. Sounds like more like a skinwalker sighting, but there's a lot of crossover between skinwalkers and not deer, because sometimes the not deer will stand up on their hind legs and walk around. Actually, that's one of the original not deer characteristics that they kind of dropped because it's a little bit goofy. But it used to be that they often walk on their hind legs and stuff.
Waited almost 2 hours before we even looked up. And when we did, that thing was gone. And I was...
You are not keeping me hiding on your floorboard in the back of your car or whatever for 2 hours because you're afraid of a deer. I'm not doing that. No. Boy, if you take me on like a date or something and you're like, hey, hide in the back seat, there's a scary deer out there, unless they take me home.
was able to turn off the van completely. When we got back inside, Stevie wanted to know what the heck happened. So I told her a story from when I was a kid. My story of my first encounter with that.
Let's see. A skinwalker in the daytime? That's a violation of union bylaws. Maybe it's a non-union skinwalker. Non-union skinwalkers exist, especially in the Midwest. Yeah. We call them scabs. This one was apparently covered with scabs, so double scabbed. Let's see. Deer woman is a very real thing in folklore here. Yeah, I know the folklore about deer woman, and I definitely made an effort not to conflate not deer with deer woman, because they're different phenomena altogether, different characters with different meanings and whatnot. A match, the poor Raven King may be Lord of the West, but he's no Queen of the Isle. Hey, Sumami.
Thing. Needless to say, her jaw dropped. She wanted to know so much more, but I told her talking about them is said to give them power. But she went off searching on her own, which is something else I advised against. But of course she didn't listen. We never really talked about it too much after that, and I lost touch with Stevie and moved.
Whew, the hot flash finally passed. Oh my gosh, that was a rough one. That's probably the biggest hot flash I've had since I very, very first started. Yes, that was a rough one. I was like, I don't know if it was burning my system up.
Moved April 2020. Since then, I haven't had anything like this happen again. I have deer friends, but they're real deer this time. It may or may not have been the same entity, but the way it looked at me, I'll never forget. I pray I don't run into it, or another one like it, again. But considering I live by even more woods, it may just happen. And if it does, I'll let you know. They weren't deer. From Davy Cannon Hound. In my city, there is a relatively large nature center, large enough to hold a small herd of deer. One day I was out there taking a walk. I'm a big nature lover, and I sometimes go there to relax. The nature center generally closes at 7 at the latest, and this was in the middle of the summer, so the sun was usually...
I love this deer that's eating the leaves in the snow that they keep showing, though. I want this as my new, like sleep at the foot of my bed pet. Like, so bad. I want to wake up every morning and let my little deer out to eat leaves. It's all I've ever really wanted, now that I think back. I don't know what I was doing with my life before I decided I wanted a pet deer.
Out fairly late. On the way out, I heard a noise I'd never heard before.
I'm gonna let this play for just a minute because I went through more of my coffee than I expected. I'm just gonna go top it off. I will be right back. You all enjoy the what am I gonna do here? Enjoy the new transition screen. right. Thank you. That just I just needed a second to top my coffee off. Yes, a twerking bee, just for you guys. That's what I do. That's how I serve my hive.
It was some sort of cry, high-pitched and warbled. It wavered a little as well, making it worse. Now, generally, I don't get truly scared. It's easy to startle me, sure, but it's hard to actually make me scared. This cry, however, woke up whatever primal instinct is left in us humans. The first thought I had was, I need to get the heck out of here. The second thought was, wait, why? I looked back behind me towards the deeper part of the nature center, where I'd heard it. Of course, I didn't see anything, and I didn't hear anything else. Afterwards, I quickly walked out of the nature center, not wanting to stay in the wooded area any longer. A few days later, I was talking to a friend about what had happened. At first, I don't think he believed me, but there must have been some look in my eyes or something, because he began trying to think of what I could have heard. Screech owls can make some weird noises, and so can raccoons. But it wasn't either of those. While those were creepy, they sounded nothing like what I heard. Eventually, we decided we want to check out the nature center at night. My friend got one of his friends together, and we managed to get inside.
So, when it comes to screaming animals at night, there's a wide variety of animals that you don't think about making noises that are, I mean, obviously not everybody, most people, realize that a rabbit will scream if it's threatened. But there's a myriad of reptiles and mammals and birds that will make just specific sounds under specific circumstances for specific reasons, right? That they'll only ever make a sound when they're doing this specific thing. Like a good example that people don't know about is tortoises when they mate. When tortoises mate, they make sounds. That's the only time you'll really hear them make too much noise is when they're mating, and they actually are very vocal. So things like foxes, for instance, make a wide range of sounds that can be quite terrifying if you don't know what you're hearing. Foxes, raccoons also make some bizarre sounds. Bears will make a lot of unique sounds at night. And cervids, deer, all have vocalizations of some kind. So, yeah.
Flashlights and knives in hand, we began walking along the trails. Fairly early on, we saw 5 or 6 deer to one side of us. Not bothered, we continued on deeper. After walking more, we heard something walking on the leaves on the ground.
And the deer cried Mary. Yes, that's golden. Thank you.
Shining our lights through the trees, we saw deer again, around the same number from earlier. We guessed that it was the same herd from before. We decided to stop in place for a bit, to listen for any weird sounds. The deer never moved on, which was odd. And whenever we shined our lights in their area, we could still see their reflective eyes staring back at us. Eventually, we decided to call it and started to head out, when we heard noise from the other side of the path and discovered there was another herd of deer. We found it odd. The nature center was a decent size, but certainly not large enough to hold that many deer. Regardless, we continued. As we went on, we realized the deer were keeping pace with us, as if they were following us.
This sounds like it might be an actual herd of deer that's used to being fed, this story. To me, that's what it sounds like. You guys tell me. Tortoises. I took the kids to a reptile show, and the very first thing inside the door was a pair of tortoises mating. They were very vocal about it, so my kids learned a lot that day. Yes. Tortoises can be quite noisy when they're feeling passion.
Stopped, and we watched both herds. I'm not sure what my friend saw, but the deer I was watching were not behaving right. They were moving their heads up and down, from normal height to down where I felt their legs should be.
Remember what we read about the chronic wasting disease earlier in the video, guys, because it's coming back right now, right? If we look at chronic wasting disease and the symptoms, the lowering of the head is one of the ones that they pinpoint.
Occasionally, one of them would take a step or two forward, bobbing its head like a dove or pigeon would. We soon decided we needed to leave and proceeded to head to the exit. The quote-unquote deer continued to follow us at a relaxed pace, as if to constantly remind us of their presence. After exiting and driving away, we discussed what had happened. We all agreed that those things weren't deer, but questioned what else they could be, as the nature center was not large enough for anything but a lone coyote. Getting on Google Maps, I discovered that the nature center...
Why are they not deer? You said that they were deer and they were behaving like deer, like diseased deer. Did you report it?
...actually connects to the woods surrounding the Natchez Trace Parkway through a thin strip of wooded area. Something could travel from the Natchez Trace woods to the nature center no problem. After that incident, I haven't been back.
If it's not a herd of deer, it's a giant centipede, huh? Interesting take. You don't want venison from a deer with wasting disease, though. No, native atheist, that sounds like it would probably be a bad idea. What would be more scary, a deer tap dancing or a deer smoking a pipe? Probably a deer tap dancing. If I saw a deer smoking a pipe, I'd probably like smile about it. If I saw a deer tap dancing, I think I'd be a little bit creeped out. Just being completely frank about it.
Creek Crosser from Marin. This story I know for sure is from an older episode, but I remember it being a pretty good one. Enjoy.
Yeah, this is the one that I really picked this video for.
Growing up on a small, mostly self-sustained chicken farm, my family had many animals. We would have anywhere from 50 to 200 chickens on the farm. Our Alaskan Malamute, a barn cat, and a few other more exotic animals as well. Mostly birds, skunks, or young foxes that I would find in the woods and bring home to nurse back to health. My childhood was full of animals, and considering the chickens would be slaughtered about every 2 or 3 years for meat and sale, I was used to seeing death at a young age. A few times our Malamute got loose, and he would attack many of the chickens. Or that's what we thought. I never actually saw him go at more than...
Just so you know the results of the poll for the last stream, the Nature Center... Did this Nature Center deer have CWD? And we said 80% of you all said yes, 20% said no. So that's the results on that. Let's see, isn't every deer tap dancing? Well, every deer's got taps on. Like they're walking, like it'd be like walking around your house in tap shoes, though. Which you wouldn't say you were dancing. Like if you walked to the fridge to get something to eat, right? You wouldn't like, oh, I danced to the fridge just because you had taps on your shoes. But if you play music in deer dance, I know that like horses can be taught to dance, but I've never seen deer taught to dance. It would be cool, yeah, but it wouldn't be creepy to see them like in that platform, right? To like see trained deer dancing, but to see wild deer dancing, like if I walked out in the woods and there was a herd of deer doing like a flash mob, I wouldn't like stick around to watch, right? That would actually be something that would make me be like, okay, this is probably something I'm not supposed to see. No, I would pull my phone out and record it. Man, yeah, I've had deer run into my vehicle. 2-star song. It's not a fun experience.
One single chicken. The most I saw was the roosters, who we raised for the county fair shows, taunting him, walking into his chained area and pecking him in the face, and running just out of his reach.
I didn't say I never dance to the fridge. I don't always dance to the fridge.
Honestly, I never blamed the big guy for defending himself when he could. But on 3 occasions, I'd come home from school to see my father piling dead chickens on top of one another. Loads of them. And none of them had been attacked in quite the same way that the Malamute did. He would simply snap the neck, but whatever was doing this to the chickens, it left quite the gruesome scene. The animals sometimes tore almost in two. Not to mention the different breeds were taken care of in different ways. The white-laying hens, who were rather plump and rarely came off their nests, would be missing their heads. The thinner, long-legged Polish, the chickens with the fluffy-looking feathers on their heads, were often nearly completely plucked of their silky plumes. These ones specifically were rarely ever eviscerated, while the rest were. I often helped pick up the dead birds. We slaughtered many for ourselves, and this didn't bother me too much. I never questioned as a young child why our dog would take so many birds like that. As a farm kid, I was told that wolves were bad, and because Malamutes tend to have a large percentage of wolf genetics, it was just his animal DNA kicking in at times. But I didn't believe that, and I could tell that my parents were grasping at straws. It was only in high school, while doing reports for the...
I can actually find plenty of videos of deer eating chicken, right? Of deers eating chickens. A deer will. I don't know what species do it the most. I think it's reindeer are the more common ones that eat. Yeah, deer eating birds. Yeah. Here, I'll show you guys real quick, because deer will bend over and chomp down a birdie. Yeah, we'll watch a couple of them. Nom nom nom.
She need every piece of it.
That bird's all up in its face though, so probably because the baby's hopping around on the ground. See the baby hopping? The mom's like, hey, get away from the baby. The deer's gonna chomp chomp. Ooh.
He's got a bird on the ground, Michael. Yeah, there's a bird on the ground. It's hurt.
The little one?
Yeah, he's picking at it. That's why they're beating him up. He's got it in his mouth.
Ow.
He's got the bird in his mouth. Oh my goodness, he ate a bird? Michael, he ate a bird. He ate a bird. Did you see that?
Yeah.
Yeah, they will eat
Oh
birds.
my word. They're really going to beat him up now.
They're probably gonna give up now. There's no reason to beat him up when the bird's already been eaten.
Oh! What is he eating? That one right there. Is it his tongue sticking out or is it a bird?
It's a
I
bird.
would hope not. No way. Why would he eat a dead bird? They're
It's
not.
a bird.
I thought they're not carnivores.
Well, they still need to get, I mean,
Yeah, that's
lots
a
of
bird.
minerals and nutrients they
He's
can
got
get.
legs and everything. I see it.
Is it alive?
He's looking at. Oh, he just ate the whole freaking deer. He ate the whole bird. Oh, he's spitting it out.
Yeah, because they're ruminants.
No.
So they used to.
Just fell out of his mouth.
Oh!
Did you
Pretty
eat
rough. But, yeah, that's nature for you. Yeah, there's lots of them. There's more, plenty more of, but I'm not gonna beat that drum too much. We're just gonna move. Oh, here's where I was looking. There we go. All right.
science teacher. He would have us track various animal sightings throughout the state, and one of them was for deer. I learned a lot of seemingly useless information about deer that month. Their lifespans, mating patterns, size, weight, diet, the whole kebab. But this was when I began to notice that some pieces of the puzzle began to fall together.
Also, mouse deer are not actually deer. They're not. They're the first thing to diverge off are ruminata, so they're not even any more closely related to deer than they are to giraffes or bovids.
Almost every time our chickens were unceremoniously slaughtered was just before hunting season. A few weeks afterward, my father would come home boasting that he saw a large deer out in the woods. He boasted that one day he would have that sucker mounted in the house. I knew exactly what deer he was talking about, one that we nicknamed Oscar. When you've been hearing talk of that large deer in the woods for almost 15 years, and you know that white-tailed deer live for about 4.5 years, you begin to get a little...
False. White-tailed deer live from generally in captivity from 6 to 14 years. They live about the same size or the same time as a large dog. They can live, or a goat. Goats have the same type of lifespan, but they live, peaking out about around 20 years. Some live a little. Some can live over 20. Usually, when they live over 20 years, it's doe that live that old, because the bucks, as they get older, get into more confrontations and stuff. But because a deer in the wild, like especially in the Midwest, like around where I live, for instance, there's not a lot. Once you get to an adult size, it's going to kill you. But mortality rates for animals are just like humans, are really driven by infant mortality rate, right? So even though adult deer don't have any predators at all in this area besides humans, because we've wiped them out, the babies do. A baby deer can be maybe, and a lot of people underestimate how small they are. They're about the size of like a small cat when they're born, or a large rabbit when they're born. A house cat can be a threat to a baby deer. I could show you videos of house cats catching baby deers and baby deers and eating them too. I could pull that up for us here. I won't, because it's a little more disturbing, because they're not very good at killing them, and it's kind of icky and horrid. But foxes, coyotes, there are a lot of potential predators. Birds of prey. There are a lot of potential predators for infant deer and a lot of accidents and exposure and all sorts of things that can happen to an infant in the wild. But once they reach adulthood, just like with the humans, the mortality rate goes way up. If you take mortality rate of a deer from the age of like 4, it's probably going to be 4 to 20, as if you take the mortality rate from 0 to adulthood. The mortality rate's probably going to teeter somewhere around like 8 or 9. So it really depends on the environment.
Skeptical. Anyway, my first encounter with an animal that I actually feared. I was with my childhood best friend. We were about 9 years old, and I wanted to show off the property I'd grown up on. My father had large, deep trails wide enough for his tractor throughout the woods. It was a large, square, 30-acre lot. We had a path following the perimeter of the property, and another crisscrossing the square in half from both directions. There were many other trails as well. Those pine woods were alive with life, and I'd often followed game trails, sometimes nearly 50 acres into the neighbor's property. We walked up behind the barn on the north side of the property, following the main trail to the back of what we owned. I'd read a book which was published on the farm about 20 years before my own family moved in. I was telling her about the property and the previous owners. The two of us were nerds, and this kind of information was our bread and butter. Now, usually I cut the walk in half, walking through one of the crisscrossed sections because, frankly, I'm lazy. But I'm also very proud of my home. I had a slew of new information, so we kept walking on this occasion. The sun was getting farther behind us. We had gotten off the school bus about half an hour before, so we were pretty far in. Now, I've encountered this Oscar before, and knowing this, my mother had warned us not to walk too far into the woods. It was rut season, and the bucks may get territorial. Obviously, we didn't listen. Turning with the square-shaped paths, we began to walk south. That's when I spotted...
Weird, I grew up in the countryside and whitetail country, and I've never been told to watch out for bucks in rut. That's never been something I was warned could be a threat to me. I've seen hunters and stuff get into confrontations with bucks, but I've seen bucks in the wild. I've seen whole herds of deer in the wild while walking in the woods, and never, not any time of year have they ever threatened me or tried to fight with me. Not to say that that can't happen, but as I'd say that it's probably pretty rare.
One of my favorite game trails. I ushered my friend towards it. I was walking just in front of her then, and she bumped into me. I'd gone quiet for the first time in close to an hour, because I spotted it. A massive deer standing before us. My friend steps out from behind me, confused, then gazes past me at the deer as well. We're both awestruck, silent. We're taking in every detail. The deer was on the main trail. The game trail we followed cut off the southeast corner of the property. But this image of the deer that was before us, it wasn't right. Imagine a deer, copy and paste it into a...
Yeah, coyotes love chicken, Ember. Good way to protect your chickens from coyotes is with a turkey. A turkey will generally, a big tom will generally drive away predators up to the size of a bobcat, or coyote. Much bigger than that, they're not any good. They don't do good against like wolves or cougars or bears or anything. But mid-sized predators, yeah, turkey will protect your chickens from a coyote, from a bobcat. Now, a whole pack of coyotes can kill your turkey. But yeah, the turkey will charge in and take the brunt of it usually, and at least spare your chickens.
To a document and scale it up 3 times its original size.
You know.
The antlers alone could be either side of the trees blocking us from the creature. I remember the dull thud they made when it bumped them against the trees, as if telling us, "You're lucky the trees are in the way." We stood entirely still before we began running, and I'm ashamed to admit that I felt a need to outrun my best friend. Something primal in me, I guess. We made it back. Windy.
Yeah, you don't have to outrun the not deer. You just have to outrun your friend. Yeah.
Exhausted and terrified, but also excited to see a deer so big. We told my parents we'd see Oscar the deer, not once imagining the possible
coyotes
outcome
can
to our
actually.
fate. Maybe it was our child.
Coyotes have actually killed people. Like there was a folk singer up in Canada. They were coy wolves, but still, coyotes will grab kids too. They'll grab children and try to drag them off, which is disturbing. Or little pocket-sized people as well. Are deer kind of dumb or coyotes? Deer are kind of dumb. Like they're not super dumb. They're kind of dumb though. And they're like goat dumb or sheep dumb.
Childish mind seeing what looked like a deer, but I was soon beginning to believe that Oscar was something else. About a week after this, my father took me hunting. Up I go into a...
Always go hiking with someone you can outrun. They're never fooled by my coyote mask.
A tree stand, holding onto a thick pine, much like the one Oscar had tapped with his horns. This day was cold and foggy.
Yeah, unfortunately, coyotes are quite clever, like foxes. They like to solve problems. They're good at solving problems. They like to. Nobody likes to have to solve problems, but they're good at solving problems.
It was a school day, but I was allowed to stay home, and it was also the only year I'd ever go hunting. As I sat in that stand, mostly trying not to fall asleep, I began to turn to look around, eventually scoping out the...
Coyotes are dumb comparison to wolves, though bold. Yeah, probably. I think wolves are probably the smartest extant canine, so yeah, that checks out as far as I'm aware. I haven't heard any studies that would contradict that. Coyotes are terrified of wolves. Yeah, coyotes are definitely more adaptable though, because coyotes can be wolves. Coyotes can fill the wolf niche in their environment, right? They can step up if the wolves are wiped out and actually fill that role to some extent. Obviously, there's limitations on their size, but as they fill that niche through generations, they will get bigger though, and then wolves being reintroduced to the areas will drive those coyote right back into their mesopredator niche, so they can actually fluctuate between those two roles. Not great, but they can. Red foxes can too. Red foxes did that when wolves were wiped out in the UK. They stepped up into that role, but the role of the macro predator in the UK is quite a bit smaller than it is in mainland North America. And the foxes generally, even in the UK, focus on fawns, same as coyotes. Whereas wolves can, they'll take down an adult bull moose with a big enough pack.
The back side of the tree. Some distance behind me, across the path, I saw a large deer. I was excited, ready to tell my father.
Oh, and for sure, nothing's more adaptable than a cat. Who mentioned cats? Jason Jacoby. Cats can adapt to pretty much any environment on the planet. I imagine if we let them, cats could probably carve out a niche in Antarctica living off penguin checks. So, yeah, it's definitely within reason. Reintroduce saber-toothed tigers. Yeah, that'll help control the deer population for sure.
That I spotted something, but I quickly fell quiet. The deer had looked up at me, looked directly at me, even from that distance, even with the fog. I felt like I was staring point blank into its face as well. But the typical glossy black eyes of a deer were not the eyes that I met, and I was soon wishing to go back home. I started to complain to my father. I made up every excuse to go home and escape, and finally he relented, on one condition. I was to go walk with him up toward the southeast side to look for deer on foot. The sky seemed to crack apart as we descended the ladder. Rain was falling now through the trees around us, the fog mostly dissipating in the warm shower. I went eastward, while he went south of our position. I ended up nearly at the top of the hill, the one I don't like to go near due to my fear of heights. There was a thicket bush there.
Why would your dad send you to the top of the hill if he knows you're afraid of heights? Sounds like your dad's kind of a dick. Get a better dad. Your dad is like, did you say, hey dad, I'm afraid of heights, and they don't send you up high? What is he trying to teach you, a lesson?
It was partly stamped down already, and curious. I poked my head inside and found a young fawn. It was maybe a few days old. I didn't want to disturb it in fear of its mother maybe abandoning it, so I rose up, and as I did, I found myself staring directly at a doe, its mother. She was snorting and stomping in agitation, and instead of charging or trying to push me away, she instead stopped. Her ears went on high alert, then she simply crawled into the thicket, hiding.
Sandy, I'm glad they give us something to look at. That's why I picked this one. All the other ones just literally had a still image of a zombie deer. They didn't have anything more, so I found one that had actual footage of deer at least.
With her fawn. Then I heard the sound of a branch snapping. A branch, not a stick on the ground. It sounded like it had come from somewhere behind me. I walked forward slowly. I could see my father's fluorescent orange cap in the distance. I was stiff as a board when I finally got near him. These woods were beginning to turn sinister. Thankfully, my father was giving up on the day because of the rain and didn't ask me any questions. Apparently, he assumed I was just cold. And that's
You would let your kitties eat penguin chicks if there was no other food source. And I bet you would be eating seals if you lived in Antarctica and didn't have any other food source besides the natural fauna. See Sumami out there hunting seals with her cats. That's actually something I'm going to make an AI now. Sumami hunting seals in Antarctica. So look forward to that.
That's why I was shaking like a leaf. Later that day, after returning home, my father would come back home after going out again, saying that he saw Oscar walking across.
Dr. Mordecai, you know the rules. When Bugbot stings you, you have to send it to sting somebody else. That's how we pay it forward.
Across the street, toward the nearby river. Only at that section, it was more like a sandy creek. That was behind our neighbor's house, and oddly enough, to make things worse, the sweet older widow who lived there that I often visited with to birdwatch turned up dead of a heart attack later that same week. Right after her passing, all the sightings of Oscar the deer had died down for nearly 10 more years. Within that time, I began to forget about the weird happenings in the forest and on our property. I had made a friend from across the world who I would video chat with often, and using my phone, I decided one day I'd take a walk with my dog so that I could record the property for her. As I left the house, I went out the back door to show off the large open lawn. I walk across the path, which cuts into the middle of the woods, and I go deeper. As I get near the back end, my dog begins to walk closer to me. I keep going in, despite my dog obviously getting a bit scared, which was completely unlike him. Soon it began to rain, so I decided to turn back toward the house. I didn't want my new phone to get wet. It was my only source of communication with my new foreign friend. I begin to slow down about halfway back, and that's when I begin to hear branches breaking behind me. I turn just so I can show my friend what the sound was. I turn the camera back to the trail, and there's a small oak tree fallen on the path about 50 yards in front of me. A tree that had not been lying there before, nor did I hear it fall and make a sound. Again, all I had heard were branches snapping, so this was quite strange. I look at my dog, who was happily panting now, probably excited to get back home. With that, I decide I'm just being paranoid. I continue to walk back, when I suddenly hear a high-pitched, pitiful screech from the direction of our home. If you've ever heard a rabbit scream, it's horrifying. At first, I didn't know what it was, and I began to run towards it.
I have heard a rabbit scream. It is very horrifying. Self-erasing memories is a sign of Fae encounters. So are you saying that not deer might be Fae? Interesting. Interesting. Yeah, some of the Fae are definitely Servant adjacent. They have, antlers and stuff. A lot of them do.
As I get to the house, I find...
Even their king, Kurnos, has antlers, right? Kurnos has antlers. Matter of fact, the cur from his name is the same as for the Servants.
My rabbit, dead. He's still warm, though.
You can say Cernanos, too, but I believe the proper pronunciation for that in the native tongue is Kurinos, but I always grew up calling it Ceranos because of servants.
There are no footprints in the soft earth, though there should have been. Every part of me was screaming not to stay outside, so I grabbed my perished friend, and I took him inside, only to get him a fleece blanket to wrap him in. I bury him, but I made sure to keep my dog inside while I did. When I was done, I stood up tall. I was on the edge of the woods near the base of our large evergreen pine tree. My eyes were locked on the trees nearby. I then threw the shovel to the ground and shouted at the top of my lungs that this was my home, and whatever was doing this was not.
Baby doll, sweetie pie. You live in the woods. There's predators that eat rabbits and eat chickens and all kinds of stuff. Doesn't matter if it's your home or not. It doesn't matter. This is the forest. The animals aren't doing anything on your property. Your property is in their home. So, yeah, if you don't want to deal with wildlife, don't buy property in the woods.
Welcome. At that point in time, the farm was running low on chickens. All that was really left was a muscovy duck who was nearly 7 years old. I can say honestly, he's still alive somehow. My parents were forced to join the workforce, so it was quieter around here anymore. More sad. I grabbed the shovel and turned. From this view of the farm, the barn is to my right. There is a large red shed in front of me, just off to the right as well.
Did you say the Muscovy duck was 70 years old? Or 17 years old? I didn't quite catch it. Because 70 years way older than any duck that I know of lives. Generally, ducks live 20, 25 years.
A white shed blocks out most of the view of the red one.
And yes,
and the house is to my left.
Yes, I know Muscovy ducks aren't like related to the regular domestic ducks, and they're their own thing, but they still have a very similar lifespan.
The road was in my sight, and many trees were sheltered in the large yard toward the west side. Standing in the road, hidden partially by some tree branches, I saw a deer who was the same size and even the same shape as Oscar. It was facing towards me, watching me. I held my ground, still angry at what it did to my rabbit.
That's kind of how genetics work. I would expect if Oscar was the big buck that lived in the area and that was his territory, that the deer who come hither forth would be of his descent.
Rabbit. It must have lost interest, because it looked away from me, and it began to cross the road. But as it did, I finally got a good look at the thing. The creature was massive, but its body was torn, bones showing, and its head was more skull than flesh. I forgot to breathe as I looked at it. When it was gone out of sight, I struggled to breathe again. I went inside,
like wasting disease.
Not even feeling safe in my own home. The next day, I would take my dog for a walk, trying to calm down. I was approaching the river that ran parallel to the road, and as I did, the dog began to freak out. I looked up, and down the hill from us, there it stood, knee-deep in the river. I didn't react out of fear. My dog couldn't either. I scooped him up, all 20 pounds of him, and I began to quietly walk back the way we came. By the time I get over a large hill in the road, he calms down, and I'm able to set him down again. I wonder to myself why that thing keeps crossing the road, why it keeps letting itself be seen, but often just barely. I haven't seen it in some time, and I moved out after a while. Maybe it's waiting, maybe it's done with our land, because everything there is dead. I don't know, but that creature made our property a living hell.
Alright. So that's not deer. What do you all think? I just started a little poll for you guys about not deer. You can tell me what you think about it. Now this channel, again, it's just a storyteller channel, is Darkness Prevails. Stories of the unexplained and terrifying from everyday folk all over the world. So that's who we visited today and watched some of their videos. We may revisit this again, huh? Yeah, I do agree with Sandy. There was a lot of repetitive loops, or that repetitive loop of the video was a bit repetitive, but it is what it is. It wasn't that bad. At least it was of cute animals and not like bad art or something like that, which is what I was finding a lot of when I was looking elsewhere. Anyway, that's gonna conclude Cryptic Corner for today. So thank you so much for sticking with me, and please remember to be kind and take care, and we will see you next time.